of the 4 Ps in our marketing mix: product, pricing, and promotion. So we're going to talk about some specific strategies. So remember, the marketing mix is really bringing together sellers and buyers by creating and maintaining a satisfying exchange relationship. And it includes those 4 Ps. So the marketing mix is the product, the price, place, which is the distribution channel, and promotion. Let's start talking a little bit more about your products. So product has what's called the product mix. And product mix is just the variety of different products that are being used to target different markets. So the focus is really on the total sales for a company across all the product lines. So think about Nike. Nike didn't just make shoes. They didn't just make clothing. They decided to branch out into shoes and clothing and golf clubs and other type of equipment. So their product mix is targeting different specific niche markets. Only golfers are interested in their golf materials or their golf apparel and equipment. So your product mix is important. So you are maximizing your market reach. Last week, you looked at the product life cycle. Product life cycle describes the stages that a new product goes through, from introduction to the market to the decline or withdrawal from the market completely. Note that it's after product development already takes place. The product life cycle does not start until the product is actually introduced to the consumers. It's used as a tool by marketing professionals to really understand the market and then plan their 4 Ps accordingly, because every stage is going to be using a different marketing strategy. So what you saw last week and created was the product life cycle and what those characteristics were. So you'll notice at the bottom, it's time. So the amount of time that's taking place from introduction until the market has been saturated, and then eventually the product is withdrawn. What you'll see to the left is your sales, and your sales are going to be represented by this graph. Okay, so in the introduction stage, you see that the product is first launched. Sales grow very slowly, typically, as people really aren't aware that the product even exists. And because of that, especially with a brand new, innovative product, the information that is being conveyed by any kind of advertising or sales promotion is really just to communicate that that product exists, or if it's a new feature to a product that's never been seen before, that that new feature exists and how it works. Typically, you're seeing very little profit in the introduction stage. Once you start to make consumers and potential consumers aware of your product in the introduction phase, you go into the growth stage. And the growth stage is where you're going to see sales start to grow rapidly. You typically have an increase in competitors in the marketplace. They've seen your product and your innovation. They've seen the interest that's been generated, and they jump into the market as well. Persuasive advertising is key during the growth phase. So your message changes from the fact that the product is available to why they should be buying your particular brand of that product. What is your unique selling proposition, and why is yours better than the competitors? You may even see prices start to be reduced a little bit because of the new competitors entering the market, and you need to make sure your price is still competitive. However, because growth is happening in sales, you will start to see profits coming in. You've paid off of your initial product development expenses, and now your revenues are starting to generate some profit. Once you've hit the peak, your sales have gotten to the point where you have saturated your target market and you have reached the majority of your customers you're going to reach, you're eventually going to hit what's called maturity. That's where you start to see a real slowdown and then a plateau in your sales. Intense competition. The point of the product life cycle is that you want to get your product into the maturity stage and you want to stay there as long as possible. You'll start to see a lot of competitive and then promotional pricing, so sales and promo deals. Your advertising expenses are also typically the highest, and that is just to sustain that growth as long as you can and then sustain the level that you're at in maturity so you don't lose any customers. Your message changes because now you're wanting to remind consumers of why they bought your product and encourage them to continue buying your product or products within your product mix. Profits will eventually start to fall. When they start to fall, that is when you have truly hit the saturation stage. You can ride that out, but as soon as it starts to fall, they trickle into the product life cycle decline phase. That is when you really start to see sales falling. Product has lost its appeal. There's a newer, better model on the market, or it's just run its course. Typically, you still have a lot of stiff competition from those newer, more innovative models. Advertising, however, is typically stopped or significantly reduced because it doesn't make sense to spend a lot in advertising on a product that has decreasing sales. Sometimes production stops completely as well. That is the point where you have to decide as a company if you're going to even continue to make or market this product. And if so, what are you going to do different, or how are you going to change the product to make sure that you can continue to sell it? That's when you start to see what's called product extensions and product enhancements. Product extensions is a strategy of placing an established product's brand name on some kind of a new product that has features consumers aren't yet aware of. So, an example would be a brand new product that then complements an existing product, such as maybe a training video for an existing piece of sporting equipment. It could be accessories. Think about the iPhone and some of the accessories that have been put on the marketplace that didn't come out necessarily with the first version. Then the other option besides product extensions would be product enhancement. And that is actually taking the product itself and making some type of an enhancement or a change to it that makes it better in some way or increases its value. So an example using the iPhone again would be adding Siri. So it wasn't a product extension. It wasn't a separate product that was just carrying the Apple name. It was actually an enhancement to the iPhone itself. So it's an upgrade to an existing product. And both of those are some options that you can use to extend your life cycle longer. So then let's talk about our second P, price. Pricing decisions are based on a lot of different factors. Some of the most common factors you have to consider would be how much consumers are willing and able to pay for the product. A lot of times they're willing to pay a lot, but they aren't able. And you have to know both factors. You have to know what's called discretionary income, and that's simply defined as the amount of money that an individual, or in your case, a potential customer, has available to spend after they pay for all of their necessities. They have to have enough discretionary income to buy your product. You also want to look at the supply and demand for the product. We looked at how supply and demand affect the price. So the higher the demand and the lower the supply, the higher market price you can charge, and vice versa. If there's a low demand but a high supply, it's going to have a lower market price, and you need to be aware of that. You have to think about your desired profit. Your markup is going to be the amount that you add to the cost of your product that would help cover those expenses for things like your advertising, and the amount of profit that you want to realize when determining that sales price. So you have to look at all your expenses, and you have to then add on the markup to determine your desired profit. And that dictates your price. You have to look at the cost to produce the product or purchase the product if you're reselling. And then also, what are your competitors pricing similar products at? And how does your product compare from a feature standpoint? Can you charge more because you have more features, or should you charge less because you have less? There are a few pricing strategies. So, one of the most common is yield management pricing. That is most often seen more in the service industry than with goods. And that is defined as variable pricing. It's based on understanding, anticipating, and then influencing consumer behavior in order to maximize your total revenues when you have a limited capacity. So, that's why it makes a lot of sense for sporting events. So, let's think about a Blues game or a Cardinals game. So think about the Cardinals. You go to Busch Stadium and there's different levels of seats, right? You have kind of what we call the nosebleed seats, and we have the green seats right behind home plate that have all of the extra services available. Those tickets are going to be priced differently. because not everyone can afford the green seats. But to maximize the revenue, when you have seats way up at the top, you need to make those seats a little bit cheaper because no one wants to pay the same amount to sit up in the nosebleeds, right? The other time you will see it with sporting events is, did you know that when the Cardinals play the Cubs, those tickets for the same seat are going to be more expensive because consumers in St. Louis are willing to spend more money to see the Cardinals play the Cubs than they are for them to play a different team. That's called yield management pricing. Happens all the time, especially in the services type of industries. You also have a few others. So when you're talking about the product life cycle, you have two different strategies you can use when you're introducing a brand new product. The first is called market skimming. And with market skimming pricing, you are actually introducing your new product at a very high price. Think about the iPhones. When they first come out with a new version of the iPhone, it's always a really high price. And then later on, as newer models are introduced, those prices go down for the same phone. So it's a high price, low volume, but a high demand item. Those are typical for products that have a very short life cycle. So iPhone has a short life cycle, each iteration of it, because in a year or so, they're going to come out with a new, more innovative version, right? So they have a very short life cycle. So the idea is maximize those profits from the very beginning because it's a high demand. You have people that want to buy that product even at that high price. So you're going to maximize the profit because your maturity and your growth phase are going to go very fast. The other side of new product introduction pricing would be penetration price strategy. And that's when you introduce new products at a lower price. And the whole idea is to capture the market share early on. So you capture more of the customers that are interested in your product. And so when competitors start entering the game, you've already got loyal customers that aren't willing to switch. So you capture that percentage of the market early on by offering the products at a lower price. Not only do you capture that, but it does discourage new competitors because they're seeing that they have a lot of product development expenses, but maybe not a lot of profit because the prices are so low. This works well with products that have long life cycles. An example would be like a new sport in a city. So roller derby, or when the soccer, Major League Soccer comes to St. Louis, it might have lower prices on tickets at first in order to capture the market share from people that might go to a different sporting event. A few additional pricing strategies. The psychological price strategy is one that you're really familiar about, but maybe never really thought about. And all that is just creating an illusion regarding a price. And you most often see it when you have a price that ends in 0.99. So you buy an item for $9.99. Companies do that on purpose because $9.99 sounds more like $9 than it does 10. But in reality, we all know it's 1 penny away from 10, right? But psychologically, it sounds so much better because it's in the nines. So a lot of companies, especially retail stores, will use psychological price strategies. Few more. Value, or what's called prestige price strategy. That is when you're charging higher than average prices for target customers who are seeking status or extremely high quality. And it might be both, or it could just be one or the other. Some people are willing to spend a lot of money for products that have a high price simply because they also offer a higher status symbol, even if the quality is not quite as good. An example might be Nike sportswear. Nike is pretty expensive compared to comparable sportswear that you might actually buy at a store like Target or Walmart. But people buy it because of that brand name and the status that is associated with it. Volume price strategy is almost the opposite in that it offers a lower price, but that lower price is tied to purchasing larger quantities. So for instance, sticking with our Cardinals baseball theme, if you buy a season ticket package, or even just a multi-game package for the Cardinals, you will get a lower price per game or per ticket than you would if you only purchase tickets for one game. That's called volume price strategy. So the more you buy, the lower your price goes per unit. Cost plus price strategy is simply a name given to a way of determining a price for a product or service where it's determined by just taking that markup and adding it to the unit cost. And then that is what you would charge your customer. Loss leader price strategy is a selling technique that companies will use by selling a product below its cost. So they're losing money, but the reason they do it is it's to increase sales of a related product or other products that are being offered. So for instance, maybe the game console for some type of a video game system is sold below cost as a special promotional item, but you have to have the controllers in order for it to work, and those controllers have a larger profit margin. So you might sell one item at a lower price point where you're losing a little bit of money because you know you can make it up by those related products that are really necessary in order to use the initial product. You do see that a lot as well, especially with promotional pricing, sales prices. So, in addition to those really great pricing strategies that are used a lot, there are a few illegal pricing strategies that we should talk about. One is called price fixing. Price fixing occurs when related businesses get together and they agree to charge higher prices in order to actually skim profit from the market. Now, you could have a situation where a station sees a neighboring gas station down the street raise their prices, and they decide to raise their prices too because they see that they can sell their gas for a little bit more. That's not price fixing. That's just competitive pricing. Price fixing would be if the owners of those gas stations and every gas station in a town got together and said, hey, let's all raise our prices to X amount so we can get more profit from our customers. When their prices are higher than any other gas prices outside of that town, that might be considered price fixing, and it is against the law. Another illegal pricing strategy is what's called bait and switch. And that occurs when a product is being advertised at a really low price, but it just so happens that it's out of stock. So when you go to the store to purchase it or you go online to purchase it, you are referred to a more expensive option. That is called bait and switch if it is done intentionally. Now, sometimes it just happens that they actually are out of stock, that they only had so many in stock and they sold them all and they're no longer able to sell you that lower priced item. And so they suggest an option that might have a higher price. If it's not intentional, it's not illegal. What makes it illegal is if they intentionally advertise a product that they know is not going to be in stock just to get you in the door. If you notice, if you are a Black Friday shopper and you look at those ads, a lot of the really high ticket items will state only 2 in stock or while supplies last. Those are things that have been included in the advertisement to avoid any lawsuits tied to bait and switch. They have to let you know that it's very likely they might be out of stock because they have low quantities and it's first come, first serve. And the last illegal pricing strategy is price discrimination. And that term discrimination is the same regardless of what context. So that occurs when an individual, a group, or a business is charged a higher price than others purchasing the same product for reasons of discrimination: age, gender, nationality, race, those type of things. So there has to be a valid reason for a price variance. Now, one of those valid reasons might be that it costs you more to ship the product to California than it does to Missouri. So Missouri pays less for your product. That is a valid reason. It has nothing to do with the actual individuals that might be purchasing in those two locations. So those are some illegal pricing strategies that unfortunately used to be fairly common and might still be. So you need to be on the lookout for that and make sure that with your own products, you aren't engaging in any of them. All right, let's switch gears to our last P that we're going to talk about, and that's promotions. So I want you to think for a second why you buy the things that you buy. There are specific reasons, and it's real easy sometimes to be like, I don't know, I like them. Okay, but why do you like them? What triggered you to be interested in them? And that's really where you need to go with your consumers. So for your customers, you need to understand their buying motives. So are they buying for emotional reasons or for rational reasons? Are they buying because that item makes them feel loved or accepted by their peers? Does it have to do with status and prestige? Does it bring back good feelings, or is it nostalgic? Do they just like it because it's attractive, aesthetically appealing? Or are they buying more for rational motives? It saves time, money, it's convenient, it makes their life easier in some way, it improves their health, or it's just something that's going to last a really long time, it's well made and durable. Or does it just fulfill a need? Those might be more rational motives. And to sell a product or service, you need to understand what type of buying motives are impacting your customers. And then you need to appeal to those motives using your promotions. So, a promotion is any form of communication that a business is going to use to inform, persuade, or remind people about its product or service. And a promotional mix then is just any combination of the different types of communication. So, it might be advertising, personal selling, direct marketing, a sales promotion, PR, publicity, or even a sponsorship. We'll talk about a few of those. First, let's look at general categories of promotions. You have what's called push promotions and you have what's called pull promotions. A push promotion is when a manufacturer is really pushing the product through the channels of distribution. So the salesperson at the store is going to convince you to buy a certain product over another product. That would be tied to personal selling. Or it might be a sales promotion where you are encouraged to purchase a product because of where it's displayed in the store. Your eye catches it first. Then you have what's called pull promotions, and those are designed to really create consumer interest. So the consumer is intentionally going to the retailer and pulling that product through the channel of distribution because they have an interest in the desire to buy it. They pull it through the channel. Those are things like actual consumer advertising that you might see on TV or in a magazine or newspaper. Also, samples, premiums, demonstrations, things that create a desire directly in the consumer, and then they ask the retailer for it. So let's look at a few of those different items in your promotional mix. Advertising is any paid form of communication, and that's a really important key word, paid. If it is a form of communication that's being paid for, where the message is going from the seller to the buyer or potential buyer, and its purpose is to inform or influence their buyer behavior, if it's paid, it is advertising. And it can be either print media or broadcast. Print being, just like it says, anything that's printed, including billboards or transit, which are those wraps that you see on cars and buses. Those are printed even though they might be moving. And then you also have broadcast media, which is TV, radio, or most commonly now, the internet or social media. So some things to think about. When you see advertisements, you typically see some type of a logo and or a slogan or a tagline, or you might hear it if it's a radio ad. So effective slogans and taglines create or support branding and positioning. What does your product or your company stand for? It differentiates you from your competitors. It tells the customer something about your product and or your company. So it might be focused on a feature or a benefit or even a use or the quality. It creates a connection to the customer. It's simple, it's memorable, it's unique, and it's very targeted, it's specific. So as you're thinking about slogans for your product you're developing, for your new business, think about these effective strategies for creating a slogan or a tagline. Advertising is presented to the consumer using a couple of different methods. Mass media is what we are most familiar with when we think about advertising, and that is those print and those broadcast avenues that communicate the message to a large number of people. So companies will pay sometimes for media rights or what's called broadcast rights as well, that will sponsor different type of events, whether it's sports or entertainment, and that allows them to have the sole right to advertise for that particular event. That is similar to mass media. It's just buying broadcast rights. So thinking about whether or not you want to use advertising and what type of advertising to promote your product or service, you have to know that advertising is extremely expensive, especially if it's a commercial. It's very expensive to produce. It's very expensive to run. The more popular the show is on TV, the higher your ad cost is going to be. In fact, for the Super Bowl, a 30-second ad is over $5 million. $5 million to run 30 seconds of a commercial. The reason it's so expensive is because the Super Bowl is one of the most highly watched shows every single year across the world. So you're getting exposure to a large number of customers. Infomercials, if you're familiar with those, they're much less expensive. So it's going to be a much smaller audience. It's going to usually be at a less appealing time slots. If you watch regular TV, infomercials are usually on fairly late at night when fewer people are awake and watching TV. But they also have smaller production budgets. They may have much cheaper actors. The editing may be rough. So that might be an option for your product depending on your particular target audience and when they might be watching TV. So you have to think about what type of products actually benefit from TV advertising because not all of them do. This is just a chart just to give you an idea of the companies that see the most benefit and then spend the most money in advertising on TV every year. And it just is to give you an idea. When you are putting together your advertising ideas for your new product, you might consider an endorsement. But remember, endorsements are extremely expensive. An endorsement is just a testimonial, whether it's written or spoken, or it's an inclusion of that image of the person that's promoting or advertising your product. So some examples, Matthew McConaughey is an endorser for Lincoln Automotive. Peyton Manning, Papa John's. Jennifer Aniston actually does Smartwater, Aveeno. There are so many different examples we could come up with. There's tons of athletes that endorse athletic gear and equipment. But you have to think about what the message is that you want to convey. What type of message does that particular celebrity present? What's their reputation? What do they stand for? And does that tie to your product or service? And does it encourage someone else to buy your product or service? If it doesn't, then you may not want to spend the money on an endorsement. You also have to think about what happens if that celebrity makes a really bad decision or a bad choice. Does it negatively impact your reputation and your product, or does it positively impact? Sometimes it goes both ways. And what you're most familiar with would be cyber or online advertising. So you have pop-up ads, which you know are those ads that just appear in a new browser window when you first log on. You've got banner ads, and those are the ones that are displayed across the top or sometimes the bottom or even on the side of a web page. Those are typically more screen ads if they're on the left or right. But the screen ads are things that can be printed. Banner ads typically cannot. And then finally, you've got a webcast, which will just be a broadcast that's made online. So it might be similar to a podcast. A lot of podcasts now are actually webcasts where they have an option of audio only as a podcast or a webcast where you see the individuals live. So those are some options you might want to consider for your product or service. Let's talk about a few more options in your promotional mix. Personal selling is helping customers make satisfying buying decisions by communicating how that product or service matches their particular need or want. It's really helping the customer make an educated decision. And the whole goal is to ensure customer satisfaction. It's not just to get a sale, it's to make sure that what the customer purchases or spends their money on is something that is going to meet their needs and wants so they are satisfied and they are going to tell other people about your product and service and they're going to buy more from you. You build a level of trust. It's typically a face-to-face or maybe even over the phone, but it is a connection and a relationship that you're going for. You can have inside sales. Those take place inside a business, like at a retailer when you have a salesperson help you. Outside sales, which might take place door to door. Somebody used to be more common. People would do door to door sales where they knock on your door and they ask if you're interested in hearing about their vacuum cleaner, and they come in and they vacuum a floor. A lot of times now, outside sales are going to be more electronic based, or on the phone with telemarketing. But personal selling really lends itself to items that need to be demonstrated or are more likely to be purchased if they're demonstrated, touched, tried on. So, shoes, for instance. Think about the first time you bought a particular brand of shoe. Did you just buy it off the internet without ever trying on a pair of Nikes, ever wearing a pair of Nikes? Or would you prefer to try those on first, especially if it's for a sport? Would you rather try those cleats on, at least know that the Nike cleats fit you well and they're comfortable and they hold up the first time before you start buying on the internet? Those are the type of products that typically lend themselves to personal selling. Golf clubs, baseball bats, you typically swing it before you buy it, right? So think about whether or not your product really benefits from personal selling or if it can be sold simply on a website. Another promotional mix item is direct marketing. Direct marketing is used a little less often now, except for in the electronic realm. Direct marketing is really marketing products directly to a very specific group of prospective customers rather than using those mass media. So, not using TV advertising or a billboard, but instead really focusing in on a more direct group of prospective customers that you know might have an interest in your product. And you know that because they've already purchased a similar product or they've already visited your store or your website. So you are generating leads that then salespeople can pursue using direct mail, which would be things that come in the mail. If you get a Dick's Sporting Goods catalog or a little flyer, that's direct mail. You might get a warranty registration that ties to a product that you've purchased. You know, really, you get the warranty anyway. All that company is doing is generating a list so they can send you more information later about similar products or upgrades to a product that you may have already purchased. And then you get email online newsletters. You can opt into a lot of different emails or online newsletters from different companies that you visit online. If you visited them online, you are now a prospective customer, someone who had an interest at one point. And so direct marketing is going to take advantage of that. Then you have what's called sales promotion, and that's just the use of any short-term interest-building activity or some type of an incentive that is going to increase the sales of a product. You have both business to business and consumer sales promotions. So thinking about the push and the pull that we talked about, some fit into the push, some fit into the pull. Business to business is going to be pushing the products out. So it's a push promotion. And it's things like slotting allowances, that's paying a retailer to place your product in a highly visible location in their store. Might be buying allowances where you're giving a discount to the retailer for purchasing a larger quantity of your product. A sales incentive, which is a reward that you would give the employees or the actual salespeople in the retail location. Or if it's not retail, it might be more direct selling. And so you are going to incentivize the employees to sell your shoe over a competitive shoe, and whoever sells the most wins a trip to Hawaii. That would be a sales incentive. You also have trade shows and conventions where you set up booths and individuals in that particular industry visit the convention, go to the seminars, and then come to your trade show, and you can introduce new products and ideas to them. And then finally, cooperative advertising. That is sharing the expense of advertising your product in that retailer's advertisement. So when you see a Dick's Sporting Goods ad in the newspaper, whoever the products companies are that they're advertising, typically the product company has helped them pay for the cost of that advertising. Then you have what's called business to consumer sales promotions. And those are all of those short-term things that might encourage you as a consumer to purchase. So premiums, you're getting something free or you're getting a discount on another product if you buy one. You have sponsorships. You have incentives like sweepstakes or rebates or even just $1 off or a percentage off coupon. You have things inside the stores like product samples, or you might have a product sample that's attached to another product that you buy, and you get the sample for free. You have product tie-ins and product placement we're going to talk more about, as well as the visual merchandising displays that you see inside stores. So when you see things like the Coke products all stacked up to make the Olympic rings in the different colors, that would be visual merchandising and display. And it catches your eye and it makes you interested in those products. And then you have your loyalty marketing programs, things like buy 4 bagels at Panera and you get the fifth one free. Those are all loyalty marketing programs. And it just encourages you to go to Panera to buy your bagel instead of somewhere else to buy your bagel because you know after 4 you get a free one, right? So that is the purpose of your sales promotion, is the short-term incentive to really increase sales of a product in the short term. Where advertising takes a long time to maybe convince someone to buy your service or product, a sales promotion is very fast. So let's talk about a couple of those. Cross promotion is a joint marketing tactic that's going to target buyers of one product with an offer to purchase a related product. So both businesses are going to promote themselves simultaneously. They are not connected. It's two separate companies. So it might be the buyer of a computer program might receive an email offer with a reduced price on a user's guide, or maybe it's a reduced price on a printer that ties well with the laptop they just purchased. Might be a mobile phone company that works with a popular music artist and packages some of their songs as exclusive ringtones. So not the free ones, but the ones you have to pay for. Those are cross promotions. It's two different companies with related products that are both trying to increase their sales at the same time by working together. Then you have a product tie-in. Product tie-in is an advertising or promotional action that connects one brand or product with another one. Okay, so it's a little bit different. It is a tie-in that is connecting their products in a more concise way. So an example would be McDonald's Happy Meals always have movie tie-ins to the Disney movies. Their prize or their toy included in their Happy Meal might be a character from the new Frozen 2 movie. That is a product tie-in. So you are promoting the movie through McDonald's. And then finally, you've got that product placement. It's also called embedded marketing. And product placement is a form of advertisement where branded goods are placed in TV shows, movies, or even at special events. I promise you, if you start really paying attention to the movies that you watch or the TV shows that you watch, as long as they have any kind of product in them, they're using product placement. So anything that you would see that has a brand and it shows the brand, it is going to be a product placement, which means the company of that brand. So let's say it's an Apple iPhone that you see in a TV show. One of the characters is using an Apple iPhone. Apple has paid for that product to be used in that TV show. It's called product placement. And it is very effective because it's subliminal. You don't think of it as advertising. You just think that that character that maybe you think is really awesome is using an iPhone, and kind of gets in the subconscious that an iPhone is the phone to use. Start paying attention to all the brands that you see when you're watching your shows, and you're going to see a lot of them. All right, so let's talk about one more, really a couple more elements from your promotional mix. Public relations is often shortened to PR. Public relations is creating and maintaining a positive relationship or a feeling of goodwill between you and your customers. Some examples would be your company sponsors some kind of a cultural event, or your company sponsors a scholarship that's awarded to a local high school student, or you might donate equipment if you are a sports equipment manufacturer for public use to a low income area or a camp. You might conduct a camp and make it free for individuals in impoverished neighborhoods. Those are all just things that you are doing to make people feel good about your company. You're not paying for advertising. You're not trying to sell anything. You are simply creating that feeling of goodwill. So when they do need to buy your product or service, or something in your product or services category, they have this positive image and relationship in their mind to your company. Similar to public relations, and sometimes confused with it, is publicity. Publicity is also free, but publicity is a placement of newsworthy items about a business or a product And the whole purpose is to gain public attention or support by using mass media. Okay, so again, we're using mass media, but it's not advertising because we're not paying for it. Instead, we're using mass media in the form of news shows. It is used to build an image through what most people would consider reputable means. So TV news programs tend to be where people go to get reputable news. Unfortunately, with publicity, it can be both positive or negative because anyone can generate publicity for your product, your service, or your company, not just you. And so you might lose control over how that message is presented by the news media. Several years ago, Rockwood School District was in a situation where there was a small group of citizens who felt that they weren't using their funding properly. And they generated a lot of negative publicity for the Rockwood School District because they sent public press releases to the news media talking about the way they were spending the money and how they thought that it wasn't being used wisely. It was all about Rockwood School District, but Rockwood School District was not controlling that publicity. So you have to be very careful with publicity. But as a company, you definitely want to use publicity as much as you can to generate that positive attention. So what happened was Rockwood School District counteracted, and they started to write what's called press releases, which is just information that they provide to the news media. That was all positive things the school was doing. Press releases really are how most mass media get the information, and press releases are generated by you as a company. So you will generate a press release that tells about something amazing your company's doing, or a new product you're introducing, or some type of public relations that you're involved with, and you send that out in a written form to the mass media or to the news media, and then they choose whether or not to do a story. And a lot of times they'll contact you for more information from that point. But it is generated initially by the company, not by the news media. So publicity can be a huge positive for your company. That's our 3 Ps that we're going to talk about. Now, let's apply that to our new business that we're generating.